Oxygen Not Included has another update preview that is just released here for all of us to give it a try. It is in beta and it will be releasing officially in 2 weeks. This is the Critter Update 2. So this is actually the Mark II Critter Update. We can see it over here. Ranching Upgrade Mark II preview. And that has some pretty neat things in there for those of us that are really into the whole critter system. But there's also some other things that for people like me that are really into the big machines and building complex crazy stuff and volcano power plants and things like that, there's also some hidden little things in there that are going to make our lives a lot better. So let's take a look at what is in this little preview, and it's pretty dope. So what we got going on here is I have this thing set up in such a way that we have many different critters at this point. We've got some new ones, and they're all in different ranches. So let's just run through what is new. Matter of fact, you can actually see this over here if you do have the preview loaded in your game. You can just use the little index here and click on critters. And it'll show you all except for the fish right here, which is the Pacu. So there's many different ones over there, but that's kind of small and off the screen. Whoop. Problem solved. I'm trying things at a little bit higher resolution. Reason being is because besides these little new critters, there's a cool new little tool which is the Sandbox Mode down here. Now the Sandbox Mode is not the debug tool. This is something completely different, and it gives you this cool little spawner tool down here, which actually right now is kind of off this screen, so the higher resolution isn't helping me out there. But there's some cool things that you can use here. It'd be like clean floor. You can use this spawner. You can use like a heat gun that you can then like increase in size or something like that potentially, and just use it to kind of heat up stuff in a certain spot right there to kind of test things at a higher temperature. You can also do like a sample and gain materials and then flood to fill certain areas with like water or something like that. Really neat tool. I think the tool is more or less designed to allow us to create unique biomes. So eventually at some point here, it looks like they're trying to go towards the path of potentially having the ability for us to make our own maps. And these tools right here are maybe, you know, you can really kind of customize what you're working with right there. So I just flooded and added a lot of water right there, but not like everything. You can also like sprinkle in a little bit. I just have water selected right now. So if I just wanted to sprinkle in a little bit of water, you can kind of see what it's doing right there. Yes. Maybe I hit enter or something like that. Anyhow, these tools are a little bit off to the side. You can kind of see what it's doing. There it goes. Man, that's a lot of water. Boom. So there you go. That's a cool new tool that we can make use of, and it is different than what we have over here with the cell painter and everything that's involved there. So that'll be really useful. All right, so let's talk about these critters. Now, we've kind of seen that they're over here, but let's just look through them. And what we have here is we have a Draco. So these little Draco dudes actually run around. You can find them all over the map. They're all over the place, actually. Although I've moved all of them. Here's a whole bunch of them. So here's a bunch of Dracos and out in the wild. Now, these little guys just crawl all over the place, up the side of walls, onto ceilings and everything. And the cool thing about these ones is that they eat certain things like pinch of pepper plants, and they'll produce dirt, so you can actually get some dirt out of them. That'll be pretty awesome. And all of the different animals that are the critters that are in the game now have like a diet that is very understandable, and that's also explained in great detail over here. So what all of these critters can actually consume and what they produce is actually all laid out over here in the browser database. So you can really just look through here and see what their diet is and then what they produce. So, you know, we have like just the normal hatch. We also have a stone hatch. The stone hatch, you know, eats stone stuff, makes coal. And you can also see the percentages as well when you hover over them, because some of them actually produce at like 50% or 75 or 100%. You know, there's different strategies of what type of hatches you may want to have inside your base in order to get the right materials out. So if we take a look over here at some of these other things, we can see that there's all sorts of them inside of here. And they also are little hatchlings. So there's little baby, you know, little baby spawns. And essentially you have to grow them up into an adult. So here's an interesting one right here. So this is a little baby shine. It's just real small. A little baby shine. they don't eat as much, so you kind of gotta strategize when you're actually gonna grow them up and use them, and you know what you're gonna do with them, or whether or not you're going to just cook up the egg or whatnot. So there's a whole strategy behind that, but they're kind of cute and adorable, so that's pretty awesome. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this dynamic is new, but there is a limit to how many you can have inside of a ranch. So, for example, inside of this area right here, I pretty much have these set up to be almost the maximum amount. You can actually see the amount of room here. This one is 89 tiles, and I have a little something going on here, which I'll explain in a minute, which, yeah, one of my Dracos got behind the walls. Get out of there. Ooh, yeah, you saw that debuff right there. So waiting for babies right there. Reproduction rate is minus 100%. So they've kind of, the critter is anticipating a big family and has slowed reproduction. So we're actually kind of slowing things down. That's what I was going to talk about. If I bring this egg in here, suddenly there's too many critters in this hatchery right here. So they're, you know, either got to get rid of that egg or do something with it. So the other thing I noticed here is with these critters, you can see how they're fairly happy right now, except for this one is experiencing overcrowded. So hang on, if I move this little slickster out of here, get out of here, buddy. You'll see that the overcrowded buff went away. But if I bring in, you know, an extra critter into this zone, see, now we have a debuff, which is only minus 5 happiness, which isn't terrible. And it seems to maintain minus 5 happiness even when you bring in more critters. So you can have a lot in there, but it does have a debuff. So the other thing here is with all these critters, we now have the feeders, and the feeders are broken into what type of critter you're looking to feed. So that makes it really easy just to click this and select all of the stuff that critter can consume. I like that. Nice and efficient. All right, so let's take a closer look at some of these critters right here. So the Dracos, you can actually run to a shearing station. You know, the white ones right here, those will give you like reed fibers. So you can actually shear some of that off, and I've stored it over here in that storage compactor. Now, the other ones here, the plastic Dracos, you can get 150 kilograms of plastic when you go to shear them down. So that's really useful. It gives you another way to get plastic without having to mess around with oil. So taking a closer look at the Sage hatch, we can see that, you know, right down here, there's a massive amount of tooltip, and you can see that the rates that they consume it in. So it's actually a very, very long list. It's all up in there. But they produce coal, and you can see 100% of consumed mass turns into coal. So that's nice and clear now. Whereas the normal hatch is only 50%. So there's reason to have better hatches. So the smooth hatch down here, it actually looked like if you went and looked at the database, it has a little bit different tooltip, but it looks like basically it refines metal for you inside of itself. So in case you can get one of those and you don't necessarily have the piece of equipment, then, you know, this thing will do it, and it'll do it at 75% right there. So that's pretty awesome. All right, so let's take a look at the puffs here, because these are pretty cool. So originally, we just had the normal puff right there, and it consumes polluted oxygen. We now know how much, minus 30 kilograms per cycle, and 50% of that is converted into slime. But the puffed prince right here, yes, look at that. Look at that fancy puffed. That also consumes polluted oxygen at the same rate. 10% of consumed mass? Makes me think that should be 100%. There might be some errors. This is a really interesting one, the dense puffed right here, because what it consumes is oxygen, and then it kicks out oxalite at 95% right there. So if you have too much oxygen in a certain area and you want to compress it down into oxalite and then kind of convey it to a new area, then that's a really, really interesting way to kind of move oxygen around. I like that. I think that'll be really useful and helpful in certain areas, especially when you just have too much oxygen. The Squeaky Pufflet, probably my favorite new critter. I don't know what it is about this thing, but it's ridiculous. I think they nailed the art style on this. I don't know. I guess that's my preference right there. It eats chlorine, and it outputs bleach stone, which is really useful, because otherwise we really don't use bleach stone that much. However, it is useful under medicine for the hand sanitizer, which I don't use too often because really I don't want to use up my bleach stone. So now that we have a way of actually making more bleach stone, then Squeaky Pufflet, that's the way to go. There are a whole bunch of shine bugs down here. I mean, a whole bunch. Royal shine bugs, warm shine bugs, all sorts of things. And if you just take a look at the decor, I mean, check it out. It's plus 183. And if you hover in like the middle area right there, you can see how much of that's coming from shine bugs right there. And that's with negative 67.5 from all these critter feeders. How about that? So again, they have their own little properties, but for the most part, they are just really just making a lot more decor. And they're also useful for light as well, if you want to use that in your farm as well. All right, let's talk about these slicksters as well. These things are absolutely cool. We have our typical one, which is just going to be consuming carbon dioxide and then converting that over to crude oil. You can see the conversion right there. It consumes negative 20 kilograms per cycle, and then at a 50% of that is made into crude oil. So 20 in, 10 out. If you look at a Molten Slickster right here, check that thing out. Eats carbon dioxide, but it puts out petroleum at 50% mass. That's nice and useful. Look at the little baby Slickster. Look at it, it's sleeping. The long hair Slickster, interestingly enough, simply consumes oxygen. It doesn't seem to have an output at this time. I'm not sure if it's meant to be that way and you're just trying to get rid of oxygen. The one benefit I do see that it has over all the other Slicksters is that it's got plus 50 decor for 7 tiles. But then again, if you're after that, then you might as well just keep them baby Slickster larvas, because they also give off that same amount of decor. Look at that. Plus 50 for 7 tiles. Alright, so let's move on to the Pacu. We can now have fish inside of our base, or there is fish. It's all over the place. These guys will consume algae and output polluted dirt. So that's just the normal Pacu right there. There are some others that they either died or something, but there's other Pacus out there. So one of them is this red one down here. It eats algae, outputs polluted dirt, 50% mass, has a plus decor for it. Decor. Let's take a closer look at the Pacus right here. There is a gulpfish. I can't seem to find that. Again, algae outputs polluted dirt. I'm a little hesitant to try to spawn one. I've had some issues with spawning the Pacus. One problem I've had so far is that if this room is a stable and I try to put fish inside of it with one of these grooming stations, a wormhole will eat my game. Let's try to find a gulpfish. It's kind of off screen, but if I just go over here and I type gulp, I should be able to spawn one. There it is. Splash. So what is a gulpfish all about? Every organism in the known universe finds the Pacu extremely delicious. What if I put it up here? Oh, don't do that. Alright, so that pretty much covers all of the critters. There's a lot more of them, and there's a lot more we can do with that. And there's some new goals as far as trying to collect all of your different hatches and, strategies that you can use there. Let's talk about the other half of this, which is a couple of things that they put into the automation system, and also a couple of just more mechanical things. So you may have seen this floating around. This right down here is going to be our best friend for automation. It is a SR switch right there, so this will hold basically a signal until it is reset. So let's just take a look at this. We used to make these in game, so once that signal is sent, you can see it's, the output is on, and then it won't reset until that flips, and then it'll be off. So how we can use this, I tried to come up with a little bit of an automation sequence over here, is I wanted to cool a room down. So once this got over a certain temperature, it then activated something over here, and then I have an automation switch to kind of reset it. So there's some new sensors in the game as well. So one of those being a gaseous element sensor, and I have that set up right down here. So what that is looking for is carbon dioxide. So once it senses carbon dioxide, it'll then open up and expose this terrarium in this situation. So that's really useful if you want to separate out certain types of gas or just do things when a certain type of gas gets to a certain spot. So that's really cool. So for things like polluted oxygen, I could see that being useful. chlorine, things like that, or carbon dioxide in this case. There's also new sensors that go directly on both gas pipes and liquid pipes. We can see them right on over here. So this one is a thermal sensor, an element sensor, and a germ sensor. So again, we can use, any one of those to kind of control certain things like valves. So if we sense the wrong type of material coming through the pipe, rather than running it through a filter every single time, what we can do is we can redirect that flow and then process it out so that it doesn't end up going into our equipment and breaking it with like the element sensor. The thermal sensor right here is limited currently in this, early build of the next update to 100 degrees Celsius. Hopefully that goes up a little bit higher. I know the thermal switch that is just kind of out in the gas area, that goes up to 300 degrees Celsius. That would make a very, very big difference, especially on things like our volcano power plant, where we're trying to preheat certain liquids inside of the pipe up to a temperature before we then move it on to the next area. That would be extremely useful. So that sensor right there is one that I'm very, very excited about. There's also some new types of pipes here, which is also really, really cool. So these are called radiant liquid pipes. We have the normal pipes, which we've used. We also have insulated pipes, and now we have radiant pipes. So let's try to put this into a system. So what I got over here is some areas that are a little bit warmer and I want to cool them down. So I have a sensor that tries to run a little sequence right here so that some cold hydrogen comes from a cold biome and then goes through these radiator pipes and then cools this area down until it reaches a certain temperature, and then it conveys out and blocks it off. So that then goes through a radiator and cools back down. So I should have hydrogen that kind of builds up over here that's nice and cold, and then it flips, comes in here, cools this down to the right temperature I want, and once it reaches that, it then conveys out. That's the idea. We'll see if I can get it to work. I was just trying to find a way to, potentially show all of the different updates in one single arrangement right here. So this seemed to work out. So that is currently above 30 degrees Celsius, so I should get some nice cold hydrogen that's going to flow into this room. That's what I'm looking to see, yes, so it's coming in. And then what I should see temperature-wise is that this tries to radiate out and really cool down this room, because it will stop here and it's just going to sit in the pipes. We'll speed it up a little bit. So you can see the temperature here starting to drop down. I also have another sensor over here that's trying to monitor the temperature of the gas that's inside that pipe. So if it gets to a point where it can no longer transfer, then it will move out of the way. So if this goes above 15 degrees, which we should see, or maybe let's say just above 10 degrees, it should move on. So we completed one signal. At this point, we now reset it. So it's going to move that hydrogen on and potentially not even reset ever. So I guess at that point I have to have some sort of timer that flips that back over or whatever. I'm sure there's a way to make it work, but you can see what I'm trying to do there. So right down here where there's no equipment running, we should see that this works a little bit better. It doesn't help that I have a ton of oxygen inside of here. It's like 3,000 kilograms. So as this flows back through the radiator, it should cool down. Now I might want to actually put a restrictor over here so it actually runs a little bit slower, but you can see the idea. We're trying to combine different types of gas at this point, or different types of pipes, in order to make the new stuff work. So as you can see here, that gives us some more tools to really play with the automation system and the thermal system, which is going to be nice and useful. So I want to do one little experiment here, and that's just going to be 3 pumps pumping into kind of the end of the pipe to see what ones are going to cool down, to see if we can see the difference between normal, insulated, and radiant. And then that will be the end of this little preview here. So you can make these radiant pipes out of the same materials here. So I'm going to go ahead and use wolframite. I'll just have it go up and back down. And then for the insulated, well, let's see. Obviously abyssalite would be would work really well for insulating, but I'm going to go ahead and use granite. So we'll compare granite to this. And then for this gas pipe, we can see again, we only have the type of stone, so we'll just go with granite as well. So the difference is going to be obvious at this point. You can get the idea of exactly what we're doing here. So we go straight to abyssalite, right back in. Well, actually, we'll just dump it. All right, so I have hydrogen at 0 degrees going into oxygen at 100 degrees. Let's see how this works. We'll run at a medium speed. Oh, I'm overheating my gas valves. Crap. That's all right. Hopefully they won't die before this experiment ends. You can see the temperature over here on the right, just after a little bit, is at 90 degrees. We got 99.8, 98.7. So this is insulated. It's actually not, transferring a lot of energy. Whereas the one over here on the left is transferring a little bit of energy, with the one over here on the right, obviously because it's made out of a much better material, wolframite, it's cooling down quite quickly. Now, for something like this, again, we'd probably want to use a shutoff valve and just kind of a little bit of a sensor right there in order to monitor the temperature within that pipe so that you can kind of radiate and then convey it out and radiate and convey it out, just like I was doing over here, even though I tried to get too fancy with it and it didn't work. But so here's a pretty good representation of the difference. I mean, we're at 56 over there using these nice new radiant gas pipes. Insulated one, 98.7, and then over here on the left, 79.3. So there definitely is a big benefit to the new radiated gas pipes. So when we look at the liquid pipes here, I'm guessing that this is just going to be all like granite and stuff, just like we saw beforehand. Tungsten is still showing up here, and wolframite is still showing up, but I would think only refined metals would end up, being available for radiant pipes. It looks like that might have just been left in there, so you might want to keep an eye on that as the updates continue to roll out for this beta build. But there you have it, guys. Those are some of the new features here inside of the new Oxygen Not Included update preview, for which is the Ranching Upgrade Mark II. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this new little update. I'm looking forward to it. I definitely want to play around with these new little sensors, and that, memory toggle is really going to help me out here, and the quest to get all of your different little critters. I like it. This is a really good update. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this little episode here of Oxygen Not Included. And if I've earned your subscription, then thank you so much for that. Stay awesome, guys. Peace. Brothgar out.